I appreciate that, Stephanie. That always makes me feel good to hear those compliments. And I do work really hard to form good relationships, positive relationships with our families. It's something that I take pride in. And so when I hear that people think that's going well, I really enjoy getting that feedback. So that's really the point of tonight's meeting. It really is about transparency and making sure that we all are learning the same information, that we're on the same page. I just shared my screen, so I wanted to make sure that everyone can see that. I have a little tiny window that I can see people in, but make sure that if you have questions, that you just stop me as I'm going. You can raise your hand. I'll try to keep track of that. And I know Stephanie is also watching for questions in the chat or people raising their hands. I wanted to take a second to introduce myself. Like Stephanie said, I am Beth Shepperd, and I'm the Director of Special Education here in Plainfield. This is my 10th year in the district as a director in this role. Prior to being here, I worked in Hamilton Southeastern as a classroom teacher. I was a special education teacher for 10 years there. And then I worked as an early childhood coordinator and assistant director before coming to Plainfield and then moving my family here. Like I said, I've been here for about 10 years, and I have a high school daughter. Her name's Josie, and she's in 10th grade. And then my son, Caden, is a 7th grader at the middle school. So just a little bit about me. I also wanted to include information about Mr. Toby. He's not on the call tonight. It's his daughter's birthday, but he is also an excellent resource. We really collaborate together to answer questions and work with families for anything, all things that are related to student services. So special education needs, Section 504, response to intervention, MTSS, PBIS, all of those things that fall under student services or special education services. You can reach out to either one of us. I tend to focus largely on elementary programming, but I do dabble in middle school and high school things as they arise. And he largely focuses on middle school, high school, but he does also, we share the love, we take cases as they come. So we're really here to assist our families, our community, our students, our teachers in, making their way through this really complicated and sometimes overwhelming process of special education and emotional process of special education. And we're here, and a lot of people don't know that, but we're here. And if you're ever frustrated by, you feel like you've exhausted all of the resources that you have at your building, I am also a resource here for you and can help you in the best way that I can, or provide you, in direction to someone else who might be able to help support you. So contact us. And then the meeting tonight is going to be segmented into kind of 4-ish parts, before the meeting, and then during, after, and then a little bit at the end for our students who are transitioning between programs and grade levels, and kind of what that looks like, or what we can anticipate during those conferences. I do want to share with everybody, in case you already, if you haven't already had a IEP meeting this school year, the system is different, right? So, you hear a lot, or you may have heard a lot in our community about special programs, our Power School special programs, and the change from our previous system that we used to data collect and progress monitor and write our IEPs. And so we have a new one, and we've really been flying, building the plane while it's flying. We've done a lot of pivoting. We've learned a lot over the last few months. We've come a long way over the last few months with the system, and that's statewide, not just here in Plainfield, but we're making a lot of progress on its functionality and usability. But at the end of all of that, I want to tell you that the laws and the processes that we had before special programs came into play are the same laws and processes that we have in place after. So even with our teachers, we've had to remind them, like, just because we have a new system doesn't mean that we change the way that we do things here, or that we change the way that we process our paperwork or interact with our families, or move through this process. So it has been, a little bit of a learning curve, getting used to that. So I just wanted that caveat, I don't want that excuse. I mean, it is a valid reason why things might be going wrong, but I don't want that to be the reason why, as we talk about this, like drafts aren't shared or things aren't communicated well to families. Those things are just excuses that we need to work through. So I just wanted to make sure everybody was transparent on that. So getting right into kind of the content and the meat of the content tonight. So before the meeting. So this is kind of tips and tricks, ideas, thoughts for me, participating in hundreds and hundreds of case conference meetings, just things that families should do to kind of prepare for upcoming case conferences so that you really get the most out of the meeting. And a lot of people come to the meetings and say things like they're very nervous, that they stress about it all week long leading up to the meeting, that they're uncomfortable, that the meetings are intimidating. And so that's not what we want. Like, that's the opposite of what I want. I want you to sit down and feel like a team member at our meetings. I want you to feel like you have a voice and that you're able to collaborate with us as a team. So one of the first things that I would do is review the list of anticipated members that are attending the meeting. So you should get an invitation to the case conference prior to the case conference. And so make sure that if you're like, I know we have a meeting coming up, that you ask, hey, can I have the notice of meeting, or can I have the list of attendees who are planning on being at the meeting? So as a district, we have to let you know who's coming to the meeting, right? No surprises there. We're going to make sure that we have all of the school members and faculty members, staff members that are participating in the meeting listed. We might have excusal, like a partial excusal for certain staff members that are included on the notice, but I want you to really take a look at, who's coming, what's the location, is it in person, is it virtual, and give permission if there's any line items of individuals who have asked to be excused from the meeting. So typically, our general education teachers may want partial excusal from a meeting so that they can, maybe they're participating in the meeting for the 45 minutes that they're on their prep, and they would like to go back to their students after that 45 minutes. So they might ask for partial. A lot of times our OTs or PTs may ask for permission to be excused from the meeting, but just because we ask doesn't mean that you have to grant it. So you do have the right to say, I would really like for all of the staff members who are involved in my child's team to be present at this case conference and to stay for its entirety. If that is going to be the case, just please give us a heads up. We want to make sure that we have coverage, appropriate coverage, and you are allowed to say that at the very start of the meeting, like I want everyone to stay for the entirety, but the truth of the matter is we might not have coverage for that and have to stop the meeting and come back. And so just share that ahead of time if that's your preference, that everybody comes, we're all in person, and everybody stays for the entirety. It'll just make things go a lot smoother, and we can prepare on our end. As a parent, though, you can invite whoever you want to the meeting. You can invite, your neighbor that's just a support person for you. You can invite an advocate from one of the advocacy agencies that are a part of case conferencing. InSource is one that we work with a lot, that we have advocates and partnerships with. So anybody that you would like to invite to a case conference, you can invite, and you don't really have to tell us. You're allowed to bring us whoever you want to that case conference to be your support system. I will say, though, if you bring an attorney, I'm likely to tell our people at the table just to kind of pause the meeting and let's come back together, because we will also bring an attorney. We won't say you can't bring your attorney, but we'll want to come back together and bring an attorney. That has never happened to me during an initial or annual case review or anything like that. But we do just kind of put that out there. So if you're going to invite an attorney, just let us know so that we can have ours present as well. I do want to share this resource. It's called Navigating the Course, and I'm going to try to click within this presentation and see if it will let me navigate out. No. So I will, let me maybe, I'm going to try one more thing. I don't think it will let me. So if you click on navigating the course, I'll make sure that we share this slide deck with everybody that's in the meeting. It will take you to a link. It will take you to a document that was created as a parent-friendly version of what we call Article 7. So it's the law, it's the law surrounding special education, but it's written and kind of it's written for parents, right? So there's not as much acronyms, there's not as much legalese in there. It's a little easier to kind of understand. The format is easier to follow along with, in my opinion. So it's a really great resource. I mean, it's a lot, it's thick, it's dense still, but it's a great resource for families if you want to know more about what kind of your rights are as a parent from IDOE, then navigating the course is a great resource for you. So more to talk about before the meeting. I think this is a really smart thing to do as a parent, is to request the draft ahead of time. And really, you just want to let the team know, like, I'm not trying to, play gotcha or put you at any kind of disadvantage or anything like that to the teacher of record, but it would really make me happy if I had ample time to review the draft prior to coming to the case conference, right? I think we get a lot further when we have the opportunity as individuals to really read through that and then, organize our thoughts. We're going to write notes and questions in the margins, any concerns with the draft. If we notice, the medication hasn't been updated, or the behavior plan might have a section that's out of date, or this accommodation doesn't look like we've been using that. Questions about any goals, like those kinds of things are what you're going to look for as you're reading through that draft. And so I think that will help you as you go into the meeting to feel prepared and not surprised, right? Because that's the last thing that we want to do with families, is have you sit at a table and feel like, I had no idea that these were the topics that were going to be discussed during this case conference meeting. So take a look at the draft, write your notes. I always like to remind families to be prepared to share relevant student strengths and successes. So we're going to ask you at the very start of the meeting, hey, what are some student strengths? This is what we think educationally are student strengths. But for you as a parent, what strengths do you see for your child? And it could be related to their educational experience, but it could also be like, they have a very big strength out in the community that's maybe not really related to education, but it is something that, it's important for everybody to know that, like, they demonstrate this skill in this place and it's a strength for them. We also always ask our families to share a vision at the conference. And I tell our families this vision is short-term, like to be successful this school year, or decrease our behaviors, or to increase our reading fluency, or it's, long-term. So something that's longer, like gainful employment as an adult, to be happy, to be successful, to be a contributing member of the community, those kinds of things. So take a little bit of time and just, jot a few sentences. Some people come to us with beautiful visions that they've spent, you can tell, a long time processing and thinking through about what their vision is. And some people just come with a couple of sentences. So whatever works for you, works for you. Just be prepared that you're going to be asked about that. Other things that we would like for you to kind of be transparent and share with us are the concerns that you have. And so this is a really good opportunity to, have some truth speak and to be a little bit, I think, brave and a little bit vulnerable when you're talking about concerns with your team. So sometimes it's beneficial for you to write out what those concerns are. I just really encourage you to be transparent and share. Like, if homework is a major concern in your house because you can't get it done and you're really struggling and it's, you sit at the table for over an hour and there's tears on both sides and it's just a huge struggle, share that as a concern and tell us that, because we might not be able to say no homework, right? We might not be able to fix that, but we might be able to say, hey, classroom teacher, can you just pick 5 of the 15 problems? Or what's the meaning of the homework and how can we reduce the amount? Or is it sufficient for them just to do 20 minutes and whatever they get done is what they get done? So we can problem solve through some of your concerns, as long as you're sharing those concerns with us. You can also look at state standards for the following school year to kind of help you determine the appropriateness of student goals. I do have a link to the state standards page, and it does go over all the state standards for our diploma track state standards, and our alternate diploma state standards are also listed on the same link. And then I really do go through that accommodation section of the IEP like closely. This happens a lot where we write in an accommodation in second grade. And by sixth grade, we don't need that accommodation anymore, but it's just kind of been left in there because, it worked once. And so let's just keep it in there every year. But I really think accommodations should be current and up to date, and that we really zeroed in and dialed in on what accommodations work best and are the most current for our students. So please make sure that you pay attention to that as well. So remember that ahead of time, these meetings sometimes feel like they're like rapid fire. We're getting through this information and material, and I don't have a lot of time to interact or ask all of the questions that I want to ask from all of the team members that are at the table. So you can ask to meet informally ahead of time. It doesn't have to be a case conference, and you can just say, hey, I have the draft. I know our conference is coming up in the next couple of days, but do you have 20 minutes or 30 minutes that I can really sit down and ask some questions so that you're more prepared for the meeting and you feel like you understand the direction that the meeting is going in, that you have a good understanding of like the pacing and the flow and all of those things. So feel free to reach out and ask to have an informal meeting ahead of the case conference. If you feel like, you've got some things that you want to share, or that you've got some concerns that you want to share outside of the big group, or you have a goal for the meeting that you're hoping to accomplish, I really encourage families to do that. So that's kind of the first segment, the before piece. And I'll just pause for a second and see if there's any questions on any of the information that I've covered regarding preparing leading up to the meeting.
I just wanted to add that, Beth, I put the link in the chat for
Thank
navigating the course and the DOE state standards if anybody wants to get those now. And we'll also be sending out the recording afterwards.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So then kind of moving into during the meeting. So during the meeting, you should be offered a copy of your procedural safeguards, which is your parent rights. It's a document. You'll be asked to sign a form, typically at the meeting, that just says that you've received a copy of your procedural safeguards. You can politely decline. I will say that there's a new procedural safeguards that came out in August. So if you haven't gotten the newest version, just go ahead and accept the newest version of the procedural safeguards that are out there, just so you have the most current copy. A lot of people will send the procedural safeguards like in a parent square message along with the notice of meeting. So just know that you can accept those and what they are and why we're asking you to sign. It's because we have to offer them and then document that you've been offered what your procedural safeguards are. And then during the meeting, you'll probably ask to sign the notice of case conference if you haven't already. So we typically bring a hard copy to the meeting for parents to sign. I would encourage you, I always start every meeting with, let's just start with introductions. Even though we might all know each other, I just, let's go around the table and remind each other of who we are and what our titles are and what we're doing. But if you're sitting in if you're sitting in a case conference and you're like, we haven't done introductions and I don't know who those two people at the end are, you are more than welcome to stop the meeting and say, hey, could we start with introductions? It is your right to know who is at the meeting and who you're participating with as fellow case conference attendees. And then also ask if there's not one that's readily provided for you, ask for the draft copy. So if you didn't get one ahead of time, you're like, I'm good, I feel good, I'm a pro at this, I don't need one ahead of time. But you sit down to the table and you realize, like, hey, this teacher's just reading from a document that none of us have and none of us can see. That's not okay. Like, you can't be a contributing member to the case conference process without having access to the information that's being reviewed. So you should stop the meeting and say, hey, I really feel like this should be like whatever's on your screen can be projected, so that we can all see the information, or a hard copy, paper copy of the draft should be provided to the meeting attendee. So you can ask that. You can ask that, and it's you should, if you're attending a meeting and that's not already happening. It is something that we as as leaders, as administrators, that we really do remind all of our teachers, and something that we talk about every single year. And so I just want to make sure that you guys know that you should have access to that information during the meeting as it's going on. So another thing that I just like to remind our families, that as we're moving through the case conference process, that if we can try to stay focused, and I tell our teachers this too, like, if we can stay focused at the kid, like keeping the kid at the center of our conversation and making focused and intentional decisions that are about the student and about the child, and really focusing on what's best for that individual child, everything is going to be better, right? And so if we can put some of our adult agendas to the side and really focus on what's best for the individual student, we're going to win every time. So other things to think about during the meeting. I'm really guilty about this, like using acronyms and code speak. I've been doing special education for over 20 years. I've been around for, a minute, and I think everybody knows what the acronyms are that I'm using. And that is a form of code speak, right? It is a way that, we just presume that everybody in the meeting has the same level of understanding that we do. And we just kind of keep going as special educators or as teachers. And we are having a conversation. Other educators are nodding like they know what we're talking about. And then, parents and some folks that might not be as familiar with the process, even within the advocacy agencies, might have questions about, what is that test score? What does that test score even really mean? Or what is that acronym that you just use, FBA? What does that mean? And so please don't feel like you can't stop and ask us what those things mean, because I'll tell you, even even amongst educators, there are some acronyms that we don't always recognize. So please feel empowered to stop and ask for clarification during meetings. Ask clarifying questions about goals and the measures that are being used, the criteria for meeting goals, the metrics, all of those things, right? This is your meeting. And if you don't understand how the data is being collected so your student can continue to make progress, we should be able to clarify that information, what that data collection looks like, how many times a week, in what setting, who's doing the data collection, like all of those kinds of questions. Please ask us so that we can clarify that for you. And then ask questions about, what provisions actually look like. So if we're saying that we're going to be providing consultative services, if we have a student that's on aids and supports only, if we have a student that's getting a direct service, if it's a push-in or a pull-out support, if it's a related service, if you don't know what that means and who is providing that service and where that service is happening, and maybe even when it's happening in the day, please ask for clarifying, those clarifying questions. Ask us to elaborate on those provisions. We get into a role and we're reading through those provisions, right? And we're, talking about what they'll look like. But a lot of times our families don't know what that means. And they don't know what a pull-out special education service might mean. Is it in the hallway? Is it in the back of the room? Is it in the resource room? Is it in a different location? So please make sure you're asking all of those clarifying questions. And then again, with those concerns, like I mentioned before, just be open about those struggles and those concerns with us as we move through the meeting, and kind of share and open up and extend that trust. And hopefully then we'll be able to meet you where you are and provide some good solutions for you for things that you're struggling with. So I think this is my last slide before moving into our next segment of the meeting, but I do understand that this process is emotional and sometimes uncomfortable, unfortunately, and sometimes surprising, not in a good way. And so if you are sitting in a meeting and you are feeling overwhelmed, you weren't prepared to talk about certain things, you feel unsupported for whatever reason, you don't have to sit there. Like you can say, hey, I'm not feeling like this meeting is very productive for me right now, and I'd like to pause and come back together at a different time, right? You can say that. You don't have to, sit through something that is really not benefiting you in any way. Like the purpose of this is so that, we have a great plan that we've developed alongside you. And if it's not working, then we need to stop. I would encourage you at that point in time to, pause that meeting and then come back to the table at a different time. Questions on any of the things that I have shared regarding kind of tips or things to consider or think about during the case conference?
Beth, we do have a question in the chat, and I think you'll probably cover this when you start talking about transitions, but
Yeah.
it's about can you request a tour? Like if your kiddo is getting ready to transition to middle school, can you request a tour of their middle school classroom?
Absolutely. And Stephanie, we will get to that in just a couple more slides, but that's a great question. You can always request to see and be a part of the environment that your student is going to. And that's also just really good practice for your students as they're transitioning. So I will make sure that we highlight that when we get to that slide in just a few minutes.
I have a question. I have trouble at the IEP conferences because I'm not quite sure what to ask for. My son is really young and he has a speech delay. And so for me going in without an education background, setting goals is difficult for me because I don't know what we should be trying to achieve.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Randy. And so I think that if you are comfortable with your child's therapist, that's a question that maybe you can ask leading into the meeting. Like, are there milestones that my student hasn't been meeting? What are the next set of milestones, speech milestones or language milestones that my child should be expected to be meeting? If you're still, worried about clarity of speech, you can ask those kinds of questions. You can ask for, a summary of data. This is what he has been or she has been working on while receiving services. And then what should we work on next? So you are welcome to have that conversation with your speech therapist. If for whatever reason you're not comfortable having those conversations, then I just would say send me an email, and then you and I can have a quick chat leading up to the meeting, and I can kind of help you kind of process through what your goals are, what you're thinking your goals are, what you want your kid to accomplish, as they're moving through this early stage in education, what the final goal or outcome is for your kiddo, and kind of help you prepare with that. I'm happy to help in any way.
Okay, thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, you're welcome. As far as after the meeting, so if you have paused the meeting and you have asked, one, it could be because things aren't going well. Maybe this, it's not going well for multiple reasons, but it's tabled for that purpose. Or sometimes we do table meetings for time. Like if we have a very set 2-hour schedule, our window of time, and we get to the end of that 2 hours and we haven't accomplished all of the things that we need to accomplish, we might table it and come back together at a different time. So if it's been tabled, make sure that you are setting up a reconvene date that you're looking. I'd like to do it right at the table if I can. I mean, if people are really heightened and it's not going well, then I probably wouldn't do it then. But I do like for everybody to kind of let's go ahead and look at our calendar so that we can find another time to come back together, in a week or two to get things, communication flowing again. And then you might follow up with the team as a reminder, like, hey, I know that we tabled that meeting and I'd like to really work on getting something scheduled. Can you send me some dates and times? Now, this is a mutual responsibility between the school and the parent. Like, you don't need to chase after us, or you shouldn't have to chase after us for additional meeting dates. But I do like to send the reminder just in case, because it is, kind of a mutual responsibility. If it didn't go well and you feel like your questions weren't getting answered, or things weren't being solved, or you weren't being heard and you're not being listened to, ask that question, like, is there another person that I can contact to help support me, help answer my questions, about the meeting. So don't anticipate changing things if you end the meeting and then no other conversation happens afterwards. And then we go back to the meeting and it's just the exact same conversation that happened before. Let's do some legwork in between, right? Let's start problem solving in between. So if the public agency rep, the PAR at the meeting was maybe a school counselor, and you feel like that, wasn't really working for you, you might say, is there a way that I can meet with the building principal ahead of our next meeting so that we can problem solve through some of those things? You might ask to meet with Mr. Toby or myself to help problem solve through some of those things. If you disagree with the outcome of the meeting, again, know who you can contact, right? Who you can share your concerns with, who you can escalate your concerns up to if you feel like they're not being addressed. And then make sure that at the end of all of this, that you're getting that final document, that final IEP document, and that you take that finalized document and you compare it to the draft where you wrote all of your notes with your questions and your concerns and your ideas, and you're looking through and you're making sure that those areas got addressed and that they got updated, and that the things that you wanted to be changed, included, taken out, revised, whatever, that those have happened. So just do a quick scan between that initial kind of draft copy of the IEP and then that proposed finalized copy of the IEP. Back to signatures a little bit. So this is sometimes a difficult conversation for folks to wrap their heads around, and that really comes to the end of the meeting, especially at the annual case review meetings. So for an initial IEP, families have to sign to implement services. We can't start special education services without a signature, without your permission for us to get started. For every other IEP thereafter, we don't have to have signed permission to implement special education services because you gave us that at the initial. And that's kind of the language of the law. But oftentimes we get to the end of the meeting, and teachers are very used to doing this still, even though this has been a change for years and years and years. And then parents are also really used to signing things at the end, like giving permission to implement services. So what you're really signing at the end of the IEP, if you kind of read that form carefully, is what we call early implementation. So it's not saying, do you give permission for us to implement this IEP? It's saying, do you give permission for us to implement this IEP early? So you as a parent have a right to pause the implementation of an IEP for 10 school days and say, you know what, I need to really review this and look this over before this goes in effect. On day 11, it automatically goes into effect without a signature. So we don't really need that signature. We give you that pause time to review. So if you're signing that notice of implementation at the end of every meeting, you're basically signing those 10 days away. Now, it's not to like, I don't want to scare you. You can always just come back to us and say, I found something that I want to change in the IEP, and can we sit back down? And we'll say, yes, of course. But that's really what you're signing is early implementation. And there are a few times that we might ask for you to sign early implementation, but by and large, you don't need to sign that. But when we get closer to testing season for students who are in grades 2 for iRead through, high school, we may be approaching a testing window and think there's an accommodation that needs to be changed or added in order for the student to be more successful. The test is in, less than 2 weeks. And so we're going to really need to go ahead and implement this IEP so they can have access to the accommodation. That's one of the situations why we might ask for early implementation, but I know it's confusing. I just wanted to put it out there. I'm trying to be transparent and make sure that folks know that, kind of what you're signing at the end of the meeting.
Beth, we have a question.
Yeah.
After your IEP meeting, when you finalize the IEP, how long should it take before you receive a copy of that final draft to look over?
If you haven't gotten it back in a few business days, I would start asking questions. So it should definitely not be more than a week, I would say, is very, very fair turnaround. I particularly, think we shouldn't be like 2 weeks is starting to be very tardy, right? And anything over than that is, I think, just poor practice. So, I want to give people the benefit of the doubt that life happens and that, things are busy, but it should be within a reasonable amount of time.
And that 10 days starts when you get the copy in your hands or on your computer, correct?
Yeah,
Not
so
from
it's
the
very
meeting
confusing.
date.
It's like a proposed finalized IEP, and it's that proposed part that's the 10 days. So after the 10 days happen, then you will be given a finalized final IEP, if that makes sense. Okay. So this is where we start to get into the transition questions that we had from one of our members on the call today. And this is really, so it's a little bit confusing when we're talking about transition. There's kind of two things that we talk about when we talk about transition. And that is when you become 14 years old and you are transitioning to adulthood, that is also called a transition meeting or a transition IEP meeting. But for the sake of this conversation, as we're moving into, the spring and we're looking forward to, our kids who are moving between program grade levels, there are, just kind of a special set of circumstances that happen. And so if you're moving, let's imagine you're a 5th grade student and you're going to the middle school next year, and those services might look a lot different at the middle school. And so a transition meeting might be warranted. If you're a preschool student, almost every preschool student has in developmental kindergarten has a transition to kindergarten meeting, right? And so we're talking about kind of those grade levels, moving to middle school to high school, those types of things. So during these transition meetings, you can expect a few things. Not every student gets a transition meeting. So if you are a family who feels like a transition meeting would be beneficial for my student, ask for it. Just say, can we talk about transition? So like, I know that, a lot of our 6th grade students, our incoming 6th graders, 5th graders moving to 6th graders will have, maybe a minimal speech service, or they're going to have a service that is, a push-in support that won't change. It's push-in support into language arts to kind of help support reading or fluency. That might not be an IEP that we would typically, hold a major transition meeting for. But what we do is have our resource teacher at the middle school provide like office hours, basically, where he invites parents to schedule time to come in. And maybe we're not revamping the entire IEP, but you get a chance, an opportunity to ask your questions and to meet with that teacher. And you get an opportunity to say, tell me about the schedule, and here's all my fears, and this is what's scaring me, right? So you'll have that opportunity without it being like necessarily a case conference committee meeting. And again, at any of those levels, right? If you're like, I just really want to meet with the new teacher and ask my questions and figure things out, then we'll make it happen. But within the case conference meeting, then for, moving between grade levels, when we're having that case conference, it typically happens at the student's current building. Team members from the receiving school will be invited to attend the meeting. We're going to review the most updated present levels. We're going to look at standardized statewide assessment and participation. We're going to take a look at accommodations and make sure all of those remain appropriate for the new grade level. We'll ask about additional accommodations that might be reviewed. And then we're also going to kind of look at those goals, right? And make sure that, what's written in the goal is written in a way that makes sense, so that, the fifth grade teacher thought the goal was this and was going to be measured this way. And the sixth grade teacher is like, oh, I prefer to measure it this way. And so we're going to make those adjustments at that meeting. Other things to consider, we're going to talk about special education services at those meetings. So we're going to look at like our preschool service will stop at some point, and then a kindergarten service will start at some point. And we use the dates 6:30 as the end of the old service and 7/1 as the start of the new service. And that's actually Indiana code about how like school years are developed. So 6:30 is the stop of the old school service, 7/1 is the start of the new school year service. So when you're looking at your IEP and you're going through, you're like, what are these crazy dates? That's what they are. That's because there's a point in which they have to transition over, and those are the magic dates that we use to transition those services over. We'll also take a look at extended school year at that meeting. So we'll review, hey, is there a need for extended school year? What does that look like? Why do we need extended school year? Is it for transition? Is it because, hey, my kid has autism and is going to really struggle with making the social adjustment to a new building, new teacher, new people? Like if we could get some, extended school year service in place so that they meet their teacher ahead of time, they walk the building a few times, they meet the new speech teacher, like if they can get some service like that, then that would be really beneficial for our kid, right? So we're going to talk about that and what that looks like. We'll review any general considerations that are part of the IEP meeting, and then we're going to change the notes, make sure we've captured everything in the case conference in the spirit in which we kind of developed it together. So just a point of clarity. So this is about the tours and visits. Some kids will really need very targeted and specific extended school year service to help with a skill, a need that we've kind of data collected and talked about over time. And sometimes it's just, hey, an informality with the receiving school. Like some families will be like, hey, Beth, I just really need to like walk the building with my kid. And like, maybe not just like the 1 or 2 times that they have the opportunity to walk the building, like they're going to need to walk the building a lot. Right. And so I'll say, absolutely. I work all summer. How can I help? Like, I'll meet you over there, like those kinds of things. So it can be more informal as well. And then more related to extended school year services, and just in case you're not familiar with it, and I think we're getting down to this may be our last slide, there might be one other one. Just to let you know that it is a service that happens over summer break. So it starts the first day that students are on summer break and it ends the day before students return to school. It is applied, or we think about providing extended school year service for information that we have data collected throughout the school year, right? So we're looking at all of this data that happened from August to May, and then we're making a determination like, hey, the student really regresses over like spring break and fall break, and it's really hard for them to like get back. And so I think we're going to really need to make sure that we provide some extended school year service. Or, hey, my kid just learned this very brand new skill that they've been working on for months and months and months. And it is May. And if we go on break, they're going to forget how to do this, right? And I need some extra practice. We need some extra help, making sure that we don't lose this very new skill that we just acquired. So there's reasons for it, and there's data collected. It could be transition related. There could be lots of different reasons. It is a walk-in service, so parent provides pickup and drop-off service to the extended school year service. It doesn't look like summer school, and I think that's the most important thing, like to share with families, that we don't here in Plainfield offer like a summer program. We do offer like, walk-in model extended school year therapy related to very specific extended school year goals and objectives. And so I just like to clarify kind of what that looks like. And again, we do offer that as part of the transition case conference to help establish relationships and build rapport and learn their new building. So this is my last slide, and I think we have about 9 minutes left. So I just wanted to let you know that we're here to help you. And I know that, it could feel intimidating to work through this process, but I am here as a resource to help. And I know Mr. Toby is too. We can't help you with problems that we don't know about. And so I think it's just so important to know, like, I'm having a problem with the teacher, the principal, I'm having a problem with something in the community, I'm having a problem with access to something. I want to help you. Like, if you can't get your problem solved, then I want to at least try. Like, I know it's not always the case, but I feel like if I can sit down with you and we can have a conversation, I can help you. Like, I feel like if I can get in front of you and you can talk to me and we can be candid, we can work together to create solutions that it might not always be, exactly what I want or exactly what you want, but we can come to consensus about things that are mutually beneficial for the student, right? And keep that student at the center of conversation. So we're here to advocate. I know that seems strange, but we are here to advocate for our families. We're here to advocate for our teachers and families the same, right? We want this process to work for their children. I am proud to say that we're outside of the box thinkers here, that we look at big picture and we try to move parts around, and we don't just say like, well, we've always done it that way. Like, that's not okay. Like, we're okay to make change and to grow and to look at things differently. I like to tell families that, yeah, we do that here. Like, yes, we do that. Like, I want to help you. Yes, we can do that here. That's fine. And that we really do, like Stephanie said at the beginning of this, value our relationships with our families. And sometimes those relationships go sideways and trust is broken for some reason. But, I'm here to help repair that in any way that I can. So I think that is my last slide. It looks like we have 5 or 6 minutes for questions, if there are any in the chat, or just any kind of last questions that you've thought of as we've been talking.
I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording.
Okay.
So that we can answer those questions.